Okay, good morning, children. Happy Lord's Day to you. We're going to have a story today. It's one of my favorite stories. I call it Picnic on the Beach. You remember that last week we talked about how the disciples and the ladies had gone down to the tomb, and when the ladies were there, the angels had told the ladies to tell the disciples that Jesus was going to go before them into Galilee and that they were to meet him there. So after Jesus appeared to the disciples 2 times in Jerusalem, they went up to their home place in Galilee. And when they got there, they must have just been kind of wondering, well, what's next? What does God have for me to do now? And they just were sitting there waiting. And I think that Peter must have just got tired of sitting around waiting for God's direction. So he just took things into his own hands. And he told the other disciples, he says, I'm going fishing. He didn't ask God if he should do that. He just said, I'm going fishing. And the others didn't ask God what they should do either. And they didn't ask for his power in doing it. They just said, we'll go too. Now we find this story, this account in John chapter 21. Well, it was evening when they went out to go fishing, and they fished all night long, and they kept throwing that net out, and they pulled it in, no fish. Throw it out again. Pull it in, no fish. Move to another spot. Try again, no fish. This went on and on all night long. They were wet, they were hungry, they were tired, and finally the morning came and still no fish. Well, a man on the shore called to them and said, children, do you have any fish? And they called back, no, we fished all night, haven't caught anything. And the man on the shore said, throw your nets on the right side of the boat. Well, what could it hurt? They threw their nets over the side on the right side of the boat. And suddenly they were astonished at the fishes that just swam into their net. Seemed like from all parts of the Sea of Galilee. Here they came, just swimming into their nets until their net was so full of fish, and they were large fish. And then John said to Peter, it's the Lord. And he knew that the man on the shore had to be Jesus himself, because it was a miracle that all those fish just obeyed his voice and swam right into that net when he said to throw it on that side. And so Peter just wrapped his robe around and jumped into the water, into the sea, and swam ashore. He wanted to beat the other disciples there. Maybe he wanted to try to prove that he loved Jesus more than they did. He had bragged about that before he betrayed him. He had said, I'll never turn on you, Lord. I will even die for you. But as it turned out, he had turned on the Lord. He had denied him and said, I don't even know him, when he was afraid of being arrested like Jesus was. So now he's trying to prove that he really does love Jesus. Well, the other disciples pulled that net of fishes in, and when they pulled it up to the shore, they counted them. There was 153 large fishes. You know, when you do something at Jesus' command and in his strength, it works. There will be results. Well, Peter went to help the other disciples pull the net up on the shore. And here they found Jesus was baking bread and fish over the hot coals of a fire that he had made. Now, I would just love to find out where Jesus got those fish. Did he create them? I don't know. But here was God himself cooking breakfast for the disciples. There were 7 of the disciples that were there. And Jesus said, go ahead and bring some of your fish too, and we'll put them on the fire too. And so then afterwards, the disciples sat around and they just ate such a delicious breakfast. It was just so nice to sit there and visit with the Lord Jesus on that lovely Sea of Galilee where they had spent so much time with Jesus, so many good days. After breakfast, Jesus wanted to have a special talk with Peter all by himself. So they went off and they started talking together, and Jesus said to Peter, Peter, do you love me? Now he used a very strong word of love in that. He used the word agape, which is the Greek word for great love. And Peter, he was a little afraid to say that he loved Jesus that much since he had betrayed him. And he probably thought that, I wonder if Jesus can even do anything with me now. Am I even going to be one of his special helpers, one of his special disciples anymore after what I did? So he said to Jesus, Lord, yes, I like you like a friend. And Jesus said to him, well, then feed my sheep. Jesus still had work for Peter to do. He wasn't giving up on Peter. And then Jesus asked him a second time, Peter, do you really love me deeply? And Peter, again, he was afraid to use the same word. So he said to Jesus, yes, Lord, I like you very much as a friend. And Jesus said to him, well, feed my lambs. Now, who were the sheep and who were the lambs? Well, the sheep would be believers that have been believers for a long time. And the lambs, they would be just newborn Christians. Now, they might be 40 years old, but if they just were born into God's family by believing in Jesus, then they're his lambs. And Jesus said, I want you to tend my lambs. Take care of them. And then he asked Peter a third time. Remember that Peter had betrayed Jesus, had denied Jesus 3 times. So Jesus is asking him 3 times. But this time he used Peter's word. Peter, do you really like me as a friend? Oh, now Peter felt very sad, very grieved that Jesus had to ask him that 3 times. And so he said to Jesus, Lord, you know all things. You know that I like you very much as a friend. And Jesus said, well, then feed my sheep. You see, Jesus wasn't done with Peter. He was forgiving Peter, and he was giving Peter a job to do. When we fall down and we fail and we disappoint the Lord because we've done something wrong that we shouldn't have done, we shouldn't give up either. When we ask Jesus to forgive us and we turn back to him, he doesn't give up on us. He picks us up, back up on our feet, and he says, I've still got work for you to do. So don't be discouraged, Christian. Well, then Peter, he wanted to know what the other disciples were going to do. And Jesus said, never mind what they do. You follow me. And so no matter what anybody else does, whether they follow Jesus or not, whether they deny Jesus or not, whether they love Jesus or not, or even if I'm worried that maybe I don't love Jesus enough, we need to just follow the Lord. Follow him no matter what. So we will see you again next week, children. Bye-bye.